Good evening, Dharma friends. Welcome to week 2 of this course where we're doing a reading of the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish. Rinpoche is unable to attend this week, so he's asked me to take his place in doing the readings. So as usual, we'll begin with the prayers before the meditation, before the teachings. We'll do the refuge and enlightenment thought 3 times, the 4 immeasurables 3 times, and then requesting the teachings. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge till enlightenment. By virtue of giving the like, I shall reach Buddhahood to aid beings. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge till enlightenment. By virtue of giving the like, I shall reach Buddhahood to aid beings. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge till enlightenment. By virtue of giving the like, I shall reach Buddhahood to aid beings. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far, according to the intelligence and predisposition of each being. We ask that you turn the Dharma wheel of great, low, and common vehicles. So I have my copy of this book that I got borrowed from the ANU Asian Studies Library, ANU being Australian National University. So it's called The Sutra of the Wise and Foolish, Do Zang Lung. Do means sutra, Zang means wise, Lun means full. Also known in Mongolian as the Ocean of Narratives, Uliga Un Dalai. Dalai is the one Mongolian word that everyone actually knows, isn't it? As in the Dalai Lama. Dalai means ocean, because the Dalai Lama has ocean-like wisdom, and they chose to name him with the Mongolian word to give it more authority, that the Mongolian leaders gave him that name. So this translation by Stanley Frye is what we've been reading through. As you may have picked up from last week, some of the translation choices and so forth are already a little outdated, but that's fine. We can still make sense of it. So I thought I'd begin by reading the publisher's note, as well as the foreword. So the publisher's note says, the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish, Do Zang Lun, also known as the Ocean of Narratives, Uliga Un Dalai, is one of the most popular Buddhist scriptures concerning the previous lives of the Buddha. Translating widely into Chinese, Tibetan, Mongolian, and Oirat, etc., these tales have been widely read in every Buddhist country for its universal appeal in explaining the karmic relationship of human tragedy and triumph, happiness and sorrow. This is the first translation from Mongolian that the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives is publishing. As a mine of Buddhist and specifically Tibetan Buddhist literature is available in Mongolian, we hope that this library would be able to cooperate in further translation and publication of similar works. We also congratulate Dr. Stanley Frye for his excellent translation of the Sutra of the Wise and Foolish, and hope that all readers of this work will earn much merit and benefit from reading this. Gyatso Tsering, Director, July 1981. So to build upon Rinpoche's introduction from last week, I'll read the foreword, which is a few pages long. One of the great treasures of Buddhist literature which have come down to us in the Tibetan translation is the Dodzang Lun, or the Scripture of the Wise Man and the Foolish, known to the Mongols, into whose language it was translated from Tibetan, as the Uliga Undalai, or the Ocean of Narratives. The history of this unusual scripture is still uncertain. For example, we are not sure whether there ever was a Sanskrit or Prakrit original. Prakrit means common languages, such as Pali, as opposed to Sanskrit, which is like a refined or educated language. So it's saying that there's no original in Sanskrit or Pali that has been found, but the legend tells us that these tales were heard in Khotan by Chinese monks who have translated them, but they're unsure from what language, into Chinese, from which language it was then translated into Tibetan, thus into Mongolian and Oirat. Whatever the history of the sutra may be, it is one of the most interesting, enjoyable, and readable of Buddhist scriptures, and has for centuries been an inexhaustible source of inspiration, instruction, and pleasure for all who have been able to read it. The narratives, of which the Tibetan version has 51, the Mongolian 52, are Jatakas. Jatakas comes from the Sanskrit root jar, which means to be born, so it means birth stories. Jatakas, or rebirth stories, whose purpose is to trace the causes of the present tragedy in human lives to events which took place in former lifetimes. The theme of each narrative is the same: the tragedy of the human condition, the reason for this tragedy, and the possibility of transcending it. It might be interesting to point out here that unlike Greek tragedy, Buddhist tragedy is never an end in itself, i.e. a catharsis, but, on the other hand, it is a call to transcend that which can be transcended and need not be endlessly endured. The people we meet in the narratives, although supposedly living in the India of the Buddha's time, might also be living at present in New York City, a small western town, or Leningrad, and the problems they face are the same problems that men have had to face always and everywhere. We see two thieves on their way to punishment for their misdeeds, a clergyman wavering in his faith and vows, an agriculturist who has lost his neighbour's property, orphans deprived of their inheritance, a man in so deep a depression that he considers suicide, unjust confiscation of property by the state, the entire human tragedy. But whereas we of today would likely be turned for relief to a psychoanalysis, I'll start that sentence again. But whereas we of today would be likely to turn for relief to a psychoanalyst or the law, the people in the narratives seek the Buddha, or one of his disciples who, through wisdom and compassion, showed that a change of thought process can bring about a change of circumstances. That is, when the eye of prajna is opened, prajna meaning wisdom, and insight into the true nature of things are seen, things themselves change and are not what they seem. This is certainly the underlying message of the Sutra, and the reason why generations of Tibetans and Mongols have read and reread it. But the Sutra contains much more, and great adventure awaits the reader, adventure no less amazing than that which we read in modern science fiction. We travel through outer space at a speed faster than light, visit other worlds and realms of the universe where there are beings of a quite different order than humans, see shining beings descend to our earth and converse with man, meet with subhuman species of beings and other unusual creatures. Amazing illumination appears, and astonishing sounds become audible. Matter changes its form before our very eyes, and time, as we know it, ceases to exist and loses all meaning. At one moment we are standing on the banks of an Indian river. In the second moment we have travelled back countless kotis of kalpas in time, and are watching events take place in worlds in which we have no record or name. One is tempted to wonder whether the compilers of the narratives were writing science fiction 2,000 years in advance of their time, or whether it might be possible that the science fiction writers of today are capturing glimpses, albeit faint ones, of a different order of reality, one which the Buddhists have always claimed, and still claim, is there for those who have eyes to see. Not the least of the charms of the narratives is the gentle humour which occasionally peeps out from between the lines. Somehow one cannot help but feel that when the monk Majestic Being, that's his name, after going through a shattering psychic experience which shook him to his very foundations and transformed him from a self-pitying old man into an arhat, comes before the Buddha, and the Buddha asks him, "Well, Majestic Being, have you been to the seashore?" And the monk replies, "Yes, Lord, I have indeed been to the seashore." That the Buddha's eyes twinkled, and that Majestic Being came close to a chuckle, which the other monks would hardly have understood. The ghastly scene in which a wealthy society matron, shrieking in uncontrolled rage, orders the corpse of a pilfering old maidservant, because the latter had deceived her even in death, dragged out of her apartment with a rope, would certainly provide high comedy if seen on the stage. The narratives are not funny stories any more than the other scriptures, but the element of humour is unquestionably there. Whenever we read the narratives to gain instruction, knowledge and enlightenment, which is the function of the scriptures to give, or whether we read them for other reasons, it must always be remembered that the compilation is a do. Do is a Tibetan word for sutra. The compilation is a do or sutra in the original meaning of a cord or a thread upon which are strung the precious jewels of the Enlightened One's teachings. Like the fool, Lun, we may miss what is important if we become infatuated with the unimportant. This, of course, the Dzangpa, or intellectual man, will not do. The ocean of narratives has long been known to Western scholars. The Dutch-Russian scholar I.J. Schmidt translated the entire sutra into German in the 19th century. Jaschke, he's famous for compiling a Tibetan English dictionary in, I think, the late 19th century. Jaschke was thoroughly acquainted with its contents and used its vocabulary extensively for his Tibetan German and then Tibetan English dictionary, and thus, in his dictionary, repeats these entries. That's another famous Tibetan English dictionary, Sarach Chandra Das, the small black one. It has been mentioned by almost all Mongolists and is found in all the great Western collections and catalogues. From time to time, fragments of translation have appeared in English, for example by Professor John R. Kruger in the Mongolia Society Occasional Papers, 1967, and by Geshe Wangyao in his Door of Liberation, New York, 1967. But a complete English translation of this unusual scripture has long been overdue. The present translation of the Do Dzang Lun was made from the Mongolian translation of the Tibetan, which differs from the original in only a few minor details. The translation is admittedly tentative, as there exists as yet no good dictionary of Mongolian Buddhist terminology. Most of the most of the proper names, if it is believed, have been correctly returned to Sanskrit, although the name of the custodian monk, Paladi, translated straight from the Mongolian Gallic letters, is doubtful. The xylograph used is the Peking edition of 1714, which was graciously sent to the translator several years ago by Professor Luvsan Vandan of the State University, Ulaanbaatar, Mongolian People's Republic. So that's the foreword by the translator Stanley Frye. So last week we covered the first chapter, which is quite a long chapter. It was a 12-page chapter. Most of the chapters are only about 2 or 3 pages. And this one had five stories within it. So it covered accounts of the Buddha's past lives, where he sacrificed so much for receiving just a single verse of Dharma teaching. And these tales were told to him. He was reminded of these tales in order to encourage him to keep to teach the Dharma rather than keep it to himself. So we can interpret these on many levels, as Rinpoche explained last week. We can relate to the Buddha in his past life, going to so much sacrifice and trouble to get some teaching, and we can think if we are doing the same in our own life, in our own practice. The Dharma is very much accessible to us, but we can look and see and apply it to our present life on many different levels. So this week's readings begin with chapter 2. The title of the chapter is Prince Mahasattva Gives His Body to the Tigress. So Mahasattva means great being. So this is a story that I'm sure most of us have heard about the Buddha in one of his past lives as a prince, where he sacrifices his life to feed a hungry tigress. This was done when he was a prince in what is now Nepal. There's actually a place just about a half-hour drive away from Kathmandu, the capital city, where there's a stupa and an old shrine, and where it is believed that this is where these events of his past life actually took place. If you go on pilgrimage, you can. It's possible to go to see this. I went there back in 2018. So we went to the spot, and they were doing a group puja for world peace there, led by Trungpa Rinpoche, who's since deceased. And so we visited a few of the old shrines there, and also did a puja in front of the stupa there. So again, it's called Namo Buddha, homage to the Buddha. So let's read through this chapter. Thus have I heard at one time, the Enlightened One, i.e. Buddha, was residing in the city of Shravasti at the Jetavana monastery in Anathapindika's park. Anathapindika is a famous patron or benefactor of the Buddha. Anata means those who do not have a protector. Nata means protector, before it means not. So protectorless, and Pindika seems to have a meaning of something like lord or master, or someone who looks after. So the Buddha was residing at the monastery in Anathapindika's park. At the time of the alms round, he put on his upper and lower robes, took his alms bowl, and went with Ananda to seek alms. Ananda is one of the Buddha's disciples. It's important to pronounce it Ananda, which means joyous or to enjoy. If we say Ananda with a short A, that actually means joyless, which is definitely not what we want to say. Sanskrit is so intricate and it has so many different vowels. It has 13, if not 16 vowels, depending on how you look at it. So it's completely different meaning to say Ananda to Ananda. The short A, Ananda, is a negating, so joyless. Ananda, the long A at the start, just intensifies it, you could say. So the Buddha went with Ananda to seek alms. That's why sometimes you'll see, when you see Ananda written, you'll see a bar above the A, the first A. That indicates that it's a long syllable. At that time, there was an old woman in the city who had 2 sons who were thieves. A property owner had apprehended them and at that moment was taking them to the magistrate for punishment. On the way to the place of execution, the thief's mother saw the Buddha from a distance, prostrated herself in his direction. I like this older translation because it says prostrated herself. Actually, to say I prostrate to the Buddha is actually incorrect grammar. Prostrate, you have to have something, I think it's called transitive verb. So you have to say, I prostrate myself to the Buddha. So the thief's mother prostrated herself to the Buddha's direction and cried out, O Lord, God of gods, in great compassion save, I beseech you, the lives of my 2 sons. Hearing her cry from afar, the Buddha had pity and in order to save the boys' lives said to Ananda, Ananda, go to the king and beg for the lives of these boys. Ananda went to the king, made his request, and the king freed them both. Greatly rejoicing that they had been spared by the compassion of the Buddha, they went to him, bowed their heads at his feet, folded their palms in reverence, and said, Lord, thanks to your great compassion, our lives have been spared. You are supreme among gods and men. Allow us in great compassion to become monks. When the Buddha had approved their request by saying, welcome, their hair and beards fell away and they became monks clad in the red robe. So in the olden days, this is how things happened. All the Buddha had to do was to gesture to his potential disciples and say welcome, and their hair magically fell off, and they magically became clad in the monastic robes. Attaining to great faith, the dust and defilements were removed through their questioning of the Buddha, and they became arhats. So arhats is considered one level of realization. Arhats literally means those who are worthy. Worthy of what? Worthy of offerings, because they have attained realization. The old mother of the thieves, hearing the Dharma, became a once returner. So even their mother attained to a level of realization. When Ananda had seen these marvels take place, he lauded the timeless merits of the Enlightened One. Lauded means praise, but also thought to himself, by doing what former deeds have this woman and her sons been able to meet the Buddha, become freed from great sin, and attain to the bliss of nirvana? Marvelous indeed is this, that in one single lifetime they have been able to attain this great blessing. The Buddha, knowing Ananda's thoughts, said to him, so this wasn't even asked by Ananda in spoken word, but he just thought to himself this, and Buddha clairvoyantly heard him. And he replied to Ananda, Ananda, this is by no means the first time I have saved this woman and her sons. In times long past, I also protected and saved them. Ananda said, I beseech the Lord to relate how in times long past he saved this woman and her sons. The Buddha said, Ananda, in eons long past, eons beyond recall, there was an emperor in this world by the name of Mahayana, so it's an interesting name, who had 1,000 kings subject to him. He had 3 sons, the eldest Mahanada, the middle son Mahadeva, and the youngest Mahasattva. From childhood the youngest son was of a loving and compassionate nature, and thought of all beings as his only sons. Upon a certain occasion the emperor, his ministers, and his wives and sons went to the forests and mountains to divert themselves. The princes went into the woods to explore and saw there was a mother tiger who had given place to cubs and was so exhausted with hunger that she was on the point of eating her young. The younger brother said to the others, Brothers, this mother tiger is starving and going to eat her own offspring. When the elder brothers agreed that this was so, the younger brother, Mahasattva, said, who could give his own flesh and blood in order to save her life? To which the brothers replied, Who indeed could do such difficult a thing? The younger brother thought, For long I have been wandering in the round of birth and death, wasting life and limb, and through attachment, anger, and ignorance have brought forth no merits. For the sake of the Dharma, I should have entered the field of virtue. Now, in order to bring about merit, I shall give my body to the tigress. As they were returning, he said to the 2 elder brothers, You 2 go on ahead. I have something private I want to do in the woods. I'll come back to you in just a moment. Going back to the tigress, he lay down in front of her, but the tigress was unable to open her mouth to eat, because she was so fatigued. The prince then took a sharp stick and pierced his body. When the blood flowed, the tigress licked it, and then had enough energy, and she was able to open her mouth and ate the prince's body. Soon the 2 elder brothers began to wonder what had happened to their brother, and then they returned, fearing that he had given his body to the tigress. Coming to where the tigress lay and seeing the bones, they knew that he had been eaten and fell to the ground in a faint. Regaining consciousness, they screamed and again fainted. At that moment, the Empress Mother dreamed that 3 doves were flying and frolicking, and that a hawk had caught the youngest. Awaking in terror, she said to the emperor, Sir, there is an old proverb that says that a boy's soul has the form of a dove. Just now I have dreamed that 3 doves were playing, and that a hawk caught the youngest and carried it away. Surely something has befallen my youngest son. So she had a premonition, or she had an omen in her dream about this. Instantly, all were sent in search for the boys. But just then, the 2 elder brothers appeared without the younger, and when asked what had happened to Mahasattva, they reported that he had been eaten by a tiger. Hearing these dreadful words, the empress fainted. When she regained consciousness, she and the entire entourage proceeded to the place where her son had died. Seeing the blood and bones on the ground where the tigress had eaten, the empress held her head, and the emperor, supporting her, wept aloud and fainted. When Mahasattva died, he was reborn in the realm of perfect joy. That's the name of heaven. Finding himself there, he thought, By what good deed have I been born here? And with his deva eye, he searched the 5 realms of being. Seeing his own bones in a forest, and his father and mother and their entourage all gathered together, and weeping and wailing loudly, he thought, I have caused my parents great distress, and this will shorten their lives. I shall go and comfort them. Appearing before them in the sky, he comforted them with loving words. Looking up, they asked, "Who are you, Devaputra?" Devaputra means son of a god. He told that he was their son. He told them that he was their son, Mahasattva, and said, "It was by virtue of giving my body to the tigress that I was reborn in the realm of perfect joy. Father and mother, listen. The end of all that is created is, without question, destruction. Where there is birth, death is certain. When one commits sins, one falls into hell. When one creates virtue, one attains a higher birth. Since all experience birth and death, do not be distressed because of me. Rejoice that I have attained a good birth and strive for virtue. There is no cause for bitter suffering." The father and mother said, "Son, it was with a mind of great compassion that you gave your body to the tigress. Since you are compassionate to all, do not leave us now. When we think of you, it is as though our flesh were being cut. Greatly compassionate one, why do you abandon us?" And again the Devaputra comforted his father and mother with loving words. And they, taking comfort, made a casket of the 7 precious jewels and placed his bones in it. Burying it in the ground, they erected a stupa over them. So stupa is like, of course we know what a stupa is. It has the mound at the bottom and then the sort of pinnacle at the top. But originally it was just like a mound that would be covered over with dirt and maybe bricks over particular holy items to indicate that this is something special and that can be circumambulated and bowed to and so forth. The Devaputra returned to his own realm, so back to heaven, and the emperor and his entourage returned back to the palace. The Buddha then said to Ananda, "Ananda, what do you think? At that time and under those circumstances, my father, Shuddhodana," that's the Buddha's father in this life, "was the emperor Mahayana. My mother, Mahamaya," so the Buddha's mother who died just soon after he was born, was the empress. So they were his father and mother in this previous life as well. Maitreya was the elder brother, Mahanada. So Maitreya, the next Buddha, the future Buddha, was one of the prince's older brothers. Vasumitra, I think Vasumitra might be referring to another future Buddha, I'm not 100% sure, was the other older brother, Mahadeva. I myself was the younger brother, Mahasattva, great being. These 2 men were the tiger cubs. In times long past, I saved them from the obstacles, saved their lives, and gave them joy. Now that I have attained Buddhahood, I have delivered them from the obstacles and rescued them from the terrible sufferings of the round. The round meaning the round of rebirth, samsara. When the Buddha had thus spoken, Ananda and the assembly lauded what the Buddha had taught, rejoiced, and had faith. So how can we apply this story to our lives? We can see that Buddha made great sacrifices to make the progress he made. We might not have to or be able to make such similar sacrifices, but we may be able to make progress in terms of prioritizing with our lives to make the spiritual aspect in our lives more important, and to develop faith in the great beings such as Mahasattva, which literally means great being, in the great beings of the past who are doing such work themselves, spiritual work. Spiritual work really means working on ourselves. The Buddhist definition of the spiritual life is not first you have to believe in a creator or anything like that. the Buddhist definition of a spiritual life is to do what has to be done. We have to work out what in our situation has to be done. The Buddha worked that out when he was in his late 20s and had been living as a prince for most of his life. Obviously, all of us are not medieval, are not princes in ancient India like the Buddha was, but so we can't copy his life. But we can emulate his prioritizing and perhaps to an extent also his sacrificing in working with ourselves in the spiritual life. Chapter 3, the next chapter, is called The Mendicant Keeps the Precepts. Thus I have heard at one time. The Enlightened One was residing in the city of Shravasti at the Jetavana monastery in Anathapindika's park. So same place as last time, where he spent many years. Upon a certain occasion, during the first watch of the night, two devas meaning heavenly beings, celestial beings, came to the Enlightened One, the Buddha, and the brilliance of their bodies illuminated the entire park with a golden light. When the Buddha had taught them the divine law, their minds were liberated, and they both attained to the fruit of enlightenment. So there are a few translation choices in this publication that haven't endured since, which is to be expected. There are probably ones in the books that are being published these days that in a few more decades will be not current, not have currency. So divine law is an interesting one. Capital D and capital L, divine law. This was an attempt to translate what we would translate now as the true Dharma. So English as a language is very good at absorbing words from different languages like Latin, French, etc., and just about everywhere, really. And Sanskrit is a close enough language to English, i.e. they're both Indo-European, such that it's natural for particular words in Sanskrit to be absorbed as an English word, like Buddha. We don't have to translate as Enlightened One anymore. Everyone knows what Buddha is. Well, generally speaking, we say Enlightened One, or more literally, it's Awakened One. It comes from the Sanskrit word Bud, B-U-D-H, which means to wake. So divine law, like law with a capital L, L-A-W, is an interesting way of trying to translate the word Dharma. And I think these days we just use the word Dharma. And when people ask, oh, what's Dharma? We just say, oh, Buddhism, basically. Basically means doctrine. How is the word explained? Well, in Sanskrit, Dharma comes from the root dur, D-H for Kalik R. This R has a dot under it, so it's pronounced dur, D-H, dur, which literally means to uphold or to support. Why is the word Dharma used for spiritual teaching? Because spiritual teachings support us through difficulties. Spiritual teachings support us through uncertain times, in particular the time of death, which we all know will occur sooner or later. So, that's how the word Dharma is defined traditionally. There are actually lots of definitions of Dharma. Another one is what we might call Dharma with a lowercase d rather than a capital D. And this is when Dharma means phenomena. So we talk about emptiness of self, emptiness of phenomena. Why is phenomena called Dharma? What's the connection there? The connection there is that phenomena uphold particular characteristics. They bear particular characteristics. So that's where it coincidentally uses the same word as doctrine or spiritual teaching, as well as for thing or phenomenon. So our translator here is translated as divine law. So even now we put a little bit of a religious bent on it if we say holy Dharma. We're still inheriting a little bit of the Judeo-Christian tradition. Actually, literally, it's Sad Dharma. Sad in Sanskrit means true. So it means true Dharma. Of course, you could argue true. If the Dharma is true, then it's holy. Then it's some sort of authority that we can look up to. But yeah, most literally, it would be the Buddha taught them the true Dharma. So we can say divine law, holy Dharma. These all have some degree of correctness, of meaningfulness to them. So, when the Buddha had taught them the divine law, the true Dharma, their minds were liberated and they both attained to the fruit of enlightenment. This is talking about the two devas, the two celestial beings that visited the Buddha. They then bowed their heads to the Buddha's feet and returned to the realm of the gods, to a heaven. At dawn, Ananda said to the Enlightened One, "Lord, last night 2 devas came and honoured the Enlightened One, and their light beautifully illuminated the park. What former deeds did the 2 devas perform that this should have happened?" So it seems to me that the Buddha, I'm sure it seems to everyone, the Buddha led an incredibly fascinating life, with lots of sort of miraculous and unusual events. To the extent where his disciples have had to ask what happened there and why did that happen, based on past lives and that type of thing, because lots of spiritual evolution, I guess you could say, was happening around the Buddha, as happens around great masters even now. The Buddha said to Ananda, "In former times, when the Buddha Kashyapa," that's a previous Buddha before Shakyamuni, "had attained nirvana, and when the Dharma was nearing its end, 2 Brahmins took upon themselves the vow of the 8 daily precepts. The one did this in order to be reborn as a deva, and the other in order to be reborn as a king. Upon a certain occasion, when a woman offered the evening meal to one of the mendicants, he told her, 'I have taken the Buddha's vow not to eat the evening meal.' The woman replied, 'You are a Brahmin monk. We have our own religious vows. Why then do you take vows from another teacher? If you refuse to eat with me, I shall report what you have said to the other Brahmin mendicants, and they will refuse to have anything to do with you.' Hearing this, the Brahmin was alarmed and ate the forbidden food. When the time came for the Brahmins to die, each went to his own realm. He who had taken his vow in order to become a king was born a king. But the one who had taken the vow to be born as a deva was born as a naga because of breaking his vow. So naga is a class of spirits, something like a serpent. Lu in Tibetan. At that time, there was a gardener who cared for the king's orchard and daily took fruit and vegetables to the palace. Upon a certain occasion, he found a fragrant, beautiful apple in a spring, and thinking, 'I have to run here and there with fruit and vegetables, and always have trouble with the gatekeeper,' gave the apple to him. The gatekeeper took the apple and thought, 'I have to go here and there on errands and always have trouble with the inner gatekeeper,' and gave the apple to him. The inner gatekeeper gave the apple to his wife, who in turn gave it to the king. When the king ate the apple, he found it more fragrant and delicious than any he had ever eaten, and learning from where it had come from, ordered the gardener to appear before him. The king said, 'Such a delicious fruit grows in my own orchards, I would like to know the reason why it is given to others and not to me." The gardener explained what had taken place, but the king commanded, "In the future, bring me only superior apples of this kind." The gardener was terrified and told the king, "But, Your Majesty, there are no more apples of that kind in your orchards. I found the apple in a spring and there are no more." The king replied, "If you can bring me no more, I'll have your body chopped into mincemeat." In great fear, the man went home, sat down, and began to wail loudly in a bitter travail. Travail, I had to look that up. Travail, engage in painful or laborious effort. A Naga heard him, and transforming himself into the form of a man, so Naga can have miraculous abilities as well, approached the gardener and asked him the cause of his sorrow and wailing. When the gardener explained what had taken place, the Naga disappeared and returned in a few minutes with a golden tray filled with fruit, which he gave to the gardener and told him, "Take this to the king, give it to him and repeat these words. Your Majesty, you and I are related. In a former lifetime we were Brahmin mendicants who took the vow of the 8 daily precepts, both for his own purpose. Because you, Your Majesty, kept your vow, you were reborn as a king. I was unable to keep my vow and have been reborn as a Naga. Now I wish to observe the vow and be delivered from this body. Obtain the ritual of the vow and give it to me. If you do not deign to do this, I shall cause your lands to be flooded by the sea." So if you do not deign to do this, deign, D-A-I-G-N, means to do something that one might think is below one's dignity. The gardener quickly took the fruit to the king and repeated the Naga's words. The king became frightened and said, "At present there is no Buddha residing in the world, and the divine law, the true Dharma, has come to an end. Where, then, shall I obtain the ritual of the 8 daily precepts? If I do not obtain it, the sea will most certainly flood my lands." In great agitation, he called his chief minister and told him, "Ah, minister, a Naga has demanded from me the scripture called the ritual of the 8 daily precepts. Try to find it for me." The minister replied, "Since the Dharma is absent from the world, where shall I find it?" The king told the minister that if he did not find it, he would be executed. In great fear, the minister went to his home and sat down in deep despair. Now this minister had an aged father who, seeing his son thus, thought, "Usually my son is of good countenance, but today his mien is sad and extremely troubled." I think it's pronounced mien, M-I-E-N. One's appearance or manner, especially as an indication of one's character or mood. But today his mood, we could say, is sad and extremely troubled. I wonder what the trouble could be. When he asked, the son told him of the king's command. The old man said, "Son, in our house there is a pillar which constantly emits light. Go see what is inside of it." When the minister broke open the pillar, he found it in the Sutra of the 12 links of interdependent causation and the scripture entitled the ritual of the 8 daily precepts. In great joy he took these to the king, and the king, placing them in a golden casket, sent them to the Naga. When the Naga received these, he rejoiced and offered many precious jewels to the king. The Naga then kept the vow of the 8 daily precepts and caused others to observe it. When he died, he was reborn as a Devaputra, a son of the god. Because the king observed the precepts in accordance with the Dharma, he was reborn with the Naga in the realm of the Devas. Ananda, the two Devaputras who came to me during the first watch of the night, and to whom I expounded the Dharma, have attained the fruits of stream winners. That's a level of realization, and have been delivered from the three evil states of birth. They now enjoy the things of gods and men, and I shall finally lead them to nirvana. When the Buddha had thus spoken, the assembly believed and rejoiced. It's a nice way of ending a sutra or a chapter. So we can see from this chapter the great value in just observing a simple precept. Even, for example, there's nothing harmful in, or arguably nothing harmful in eating dinner. There are perhaps good medical reasons for it and good spiritual reasons for it, but it's definitely not. It's definitely not one of the first four, what we might call cardinal vows that are actually harmful to people, like killing and stealing and lying, right? So, even taking a vow to not eat dinner, which I understand that Tibetan as a civilization over the generations tended to not do quite well at, probably because of the harsh conditions and so forth. Only particular strict monks and nuns would do so. But we can see even taking such a precept and observing it can bring great fortune and is definitely of great merit. Like we can imagine. So I think currently the world population is something like 8 or 9 billion. And it's nearly 1 billion. It's about 1 in 11 people on planet Earth who go hungry every night. So if a monk or a nun is up to developing in their practice that level of compassion where they can go without a meal and feel a bit not as well fed and not as and a bit more hungry than usual. If they can therefore develop a level of true compassion that not just a few but millions of people are going through at this very time, that can be a source of great spiritual advancement, I would think. So that's sort of what this chapter, how I related to it a little bit. And move to chapter 4. Chapter 4 is called The Boy Who Sold Himself to Make an Offering. Thus have I heard at one time, the Enlightened One was residing in the city of Shravasti at the Jetavana monastery in Anathapindika's park. At that time, in that country, a handsome, comely son was born to a householder. This boy began to speak at an early age and upon a certain occasion asked his parents if the Buddha was at that time residing in the world. When told that he was, the Buddha asked, "Are Shariputra, Ananda, and the others alive?" His parents told them that they were, and thought, since our son has been able to speak from birth, he must not be just a boy. Puzzled, they one day went to the Enlightened One and asked concerning this. When told that the boy was normal with the usual male signs, they trusted the Buddha's words and were happy. When they arrived home, the son said, "Father and mother, we must invite the Buddha and the Sangha." The parents replied, "Son, we have nothing with which to prepare food and the other necessities. How can we invite the Buddha and the Sangha?" The boy said, "You clean the house and sprinkle it with water and prepare high seats. The food will take care of itself. My mother from a former life is now living in Benares, and she too must be invited." So Benares, as I think was mentioned last week, is a British term for the city Varanasi. A very famous old city near to where the Buddha first taught. So the boy has indicated that he wants his mother from Varanasi to be invited as well. In accordance with the boy's wishes, the parents sent a messenger to Benares, Varanasi, to invite the former mother. The boy said, the Buddha is to sit on one of the high seats, my mother from a former life on another, and the mother who bore me in this lifetime on the third. When the Buddha and the Sangha had arrived and the Lord was seated on a high seat, and food had been offered and the Buddha and all had eaten, the Buddha instructed the boy and the Dharma and he, his father and two mothers, the present and the previous one, rejoiced greatly, and all attained the fruit of stream winners. When the boy came of age, he was ordained a monk, and, exerting himself in the Dharma, became an arhat. So, another miraculous event in the Buddha's life. Ananda asked the Enlightened One, Lord, by reason of what former good deeds was this monk born into a good family, was able to speak from an early age, and, becoming a monk, was quickly able to master the miraculous powers? It's a fair enough question. I think we would ask the same. The Lord said, Ananda, in a previous lifetime, this man was the son of a prince of Varanasi who had become impoverished. Meeting the Buddha, who was then residing in the world, and having nothing with which to make an offering, he became despondent. Despondent meaning looking in low spirits from a loss of hope or courage. And, although a member of a high caste, hired himself out as a labourer, and within a year accumulated 1,000 measures of gold. A prince of the upper caste asked him, Son, are you preparing for marriage? When the boy told him that he was not, the prince asked, Then what are you going to do with all that gold? The boy said, I intend to prepare alms food and invite the Buddha and the Sangha. To this the prince replied, If you wish to invite the Buddha and the Sangha, I myself shall furnish the gold for the food and the other essentials, and you may invite them to my home. To this the boy agreed. Thereupon the prince prepared food and the other requisites and invited the Buddha and the Sangha, honoured them and made offerings to them. When he died, he was reborn as the son of a prince, invited the Buddha and the Sangha, and having heard the Dharma, has attained release. The poor boy, Ananda, is now this monk, the son of a householder. When the Buddha had thus spoken, the assembly believed and rejoiced. It's a nice short chapter. We'll go through another one or two today. Chapter 5. The Sea God asks questions. Thus have I heard at one time. The Enlightened One was residing in the city of Shravasti at the Jetavana monastery in Anathapindika's park. There were at that time 500 merchants of that country who wished to embark upon a sea voyage to search for precious gems. They hired the services of a lay disciple who was a guide and put to sea. When they arrived at the very middle of the sea god, transforming himself into a raksha and showing his hideous, frightful black fangs. Raksha is a class of spirits. Showing his hideous, frightful black fangs, his head blazing with fire, approached the merchants and cried out, Men, give me your boat. Then he asked, In your country, is there anyone as terrible as I? The lay people said, Yes, in our country there are many people more terrible than you. The sea god asked, "Is that so? Who are they?" The lay disciple said, "In our country there are those who willfully do stupid, ignorant, sinful acts, those who take life, take what is not given, those who are attached to wrong desires, tell lies, speak false words, bear false witness, speak harshly, are attached to great anger, and have erroneous views." So bear false witness means to give an untrue testimony, or to knowingly spread false information about someone with intent to harm their reputation or cause them some kind of loss. When such people die, they will be reborn in hell and will be bound by the keepers of hell. Some will be cut into pieces with knives, some tied to a carriage and constantly beaten. Some will be held in steam until they perish. Some will be ground in a mill. Some will be made to climb a mountain of swords. Some will be burnt in pits of fire. Some will be cooked in a copper kettle, together with ice and putrid filth. Undergoing these various kinds of suffering for 100,000 years, these people are much more terrible than you. When the sea god heard this, he had disappeared. As the merchant sailed on, he changed his appearance into that of a dried-up, bony, emaciated old man, and again appeared to the merchants. Shouting, "Men, give me your boat," he again asked, "Men, in your country, is there anyone as dried up, bony, and terrible as I?" The lay disciple said, "In our country there are many who are more emaciated and dried up than you." "Is that so?" asked the sea god. "Who are they?" The lay disciple replied, "In our country there are those who have ignorant, stupid, greedy and malevolent minds. There are people who have no charity. When these people die, they are reborn as pretas. Preta is the Sanskrit word for hungry ghost. Their bodies are as big as mountains and their throats are as small as the eye of a needle." Hungry ghost is Yidak in Tibetan, I think. "Their hair is tangled and matted, and they are emaciated and dried up. For hundreds of thousands of years they never even hear the word water. Such people are much worse than you." So these kinds of descriptions you'll be familiar with if you read the elementary texts of our tradition, the Sakya tradition, called the three perceptions or the three visions. Talks about all these different realms of existence and their sufferings. Lists their sufferings in great detail, more than this. So they don't even hear the word water, let alone drink it, let alone see it, let alone drink it. Again, the sea god disappeared and the merchants continued their journey. Then the sea god transformed himself into a handsome, comely youth, and again appeared, saying, "Men, give me your boat." Then he asked, "Is there anyone in your country as handsome and comely as I?" The lay disciple replied, "In our country there are 100,000 much more handsome and comely than you." The sea god cried, "Who is more handsome and comely than I?" The lay disciple answered, "In our country there are those with minds of perfect wisdom, those who perform virtuous acts, those who are completely pure in speech, thought and deed, and have faith in and are devoted to the three precious things." As you might imagine, three precious things refers to what we call the triple gem. So the initials are capitalized, three precious things, which is an okay translation, I guess. I haven't seen it since. A precious thing is really a jewel, isn't it? That's why we say the triple gem, or three jewels. So, yeah, the Tibetan of this is konchok. This is an interesting etymology. So Sanskrit is ratna, which can mean jewel or treasure. I actually like treasure, because unlike a jewel, which is there's just one of, a treasure is something that is you can keep digging away at, so to speak. And I find the same is true of the triple gem. You can keep digging into the treasure of the triple gem and find more and more riches. So that's why I like personally the three treasures. But that isn't so common, because when they translate it into Tibetan, they translate it as Konchok. Kon means rare, Chok means excellent or supreme. So if something is rare and excellent, it's a jewel. Something can be rare but not excellent. Something can be excellent but not rare. And in both of those cases, it's not a jewel. But if you have something that is both rare and excellent, that is by definition a jewel. It's an interesting etymology. Who have faith in and are devoted to the three precious things. With whatever property they have, they make offerings. When such people die, they attain a good birth as devas, are exceedingly beautiful and comely, and have bodies that are 100,000 times more lovely than yours. To compare you with them would be like comparing a silly monkey with a lion. Then the sea god filled his palm with water and said, Lay disciple, tell me, which is greater, the water in my palm, or the water in the sea? The lay disciple answered, The water in your palm is greater. And the sea god said, This time, lay disciple, you err. You're wrong this time. The lay disciple answered, What I say is true, and I do not err. Listen carefully, and I shall tell you why. It is true, as you say, that the water in the sea is greater. But the time will unquestionably come when it will evaporate. At the time of this destruction of the aeon, a second sun will appear, sun, meaning S-U-N in the sky, will appear, and the springs and brooks will evaporate. When a third sun appears, S-U-N, the streams will evaporate and dry up. When a fourth sun appears, the great flowing rivers will evaporate. When a fifth sun appears, the water of the great ocean will dry up, and Mount Meru, considered the middle of the universe in Buddhist cosmology, will ignite and burn from the first jhana. So jhana means concentration or meditative absorption. Whoever makes an offering of even a palmful of water to the Buddha, to the Honourable Sangha, to father or mother, to the poor, or to animals, will, because of this, have indestructible virtue throughout the aeon. It is for this reason that the water in your palm is greater than all the water in the sea. When the sea god heard this, he was delighted and offered many jewels to the lay disciple, the most perfect of which he sent to the Buddha and the Sangha. The lay disciple and the merchants were satisfied with a few of the jewels and joyfully returned to their own country, where they went to the Buddha, bowed their heads at his feet, and offered the jewels which the sea god had sent. Kneeling, they spoke to the Enlightened One, Lord, we desire to become monks in your teaching. When the Buddha said, Welcome, lay disciples, their hair and beards fell away, and they were dressed in the robes of the monk. When the Lord had explained the Dharma, their outflows were stopped. That's an interesting translation, outflows. One of the words for defilements or afflictions, or one of the synonyms, I should say, is outflow, like a leakage. When our disturbing emotions are leaking, that's what an affliction is. Their outflows were stopped, and they became arhats. All the assembly approved what the Buddha had said, rejoiced, and had faith. That's the end of chapter 5. Let's do one more chapter here. Chapter 6 is called the Devaputra Gangadhara. Thus I have heard at one time, the Enlightened One was residing at the bamboo grove of the Kalandaka bird. So this is a different place to the last few. At that time there lived a wealthy prince in that country who had no son. There was a Deva shrine on the banks of the Ganges, which was called Manibhadra, and in order to obtain a son, people went there, prayed, and made offerings. The prince went to this shrine and prayed, O Deva, I have heard that you have limitless powers, O Deva, I have heard that you have limitless powers. Deva, you who protect all, I am without a son and beg you to give me one. If you can fulfill the desires of others, fulfill mine, I beseech you. Should you deign to grant me a son, I shall cover your image with gold and silver and perfume your dwelling with incense and fragrances. But if you refuse, I shall wreck your shrine, burn your image, and cover it with filth. When the Deva heard this, he thought, this prince is wealthy and powerful, and it would not do for him to have an inferior son from one of the lower castes. My powers are too feeble to fulfill his wish, but if I fail, evil will certainly befall. Going to Vaishravana, the guardian of the north, so there are 4 what are called guardian kings in Tibetan cosmology. They're mentioned in the 16 Arhat Puja, and the one in the north is called Vaishravana. Vaishravana. Vaishravana thought, I cannot produce a son either, and proceeded to Indra. And it said, O Indra, my representative Manibhadra has told me that in the city of Rajagurha, Rajagurha literally means the house of the royal house, the house of the king, that there is a prince who demands a son. Rajagurha is where, or at least near where the Buddha taught the Heart Sutra. If he fulfills the prince's wish, he will honour him, but if he does not, the prince will destroy his shrine, which he will most certainly do. Do you, Indra, king of gods, deign to give him a son? Indra replied, these things are difficult. There is at the moment, however, a possibility. At that very moment, a Devaputra was being separated from the desires and joys of the gods and was approaching death. Indra said to him, Son, you are to be reborn in Rajagurha as the son of a prince. The Devaputra said, I wish to become a monk and to follow the divine law, the holy Dharma. If I am reborn in a high caste, this will be hard to do. It would be easier if I were to be born in a low caste. It's interesting, isn't it? That little intricacy shows it's actually easier for someone from a lower caste to be ordained as a monk than it is from the higher caste. We might think it's the other way around. But what it's pointing at is that higher castes have certain expectations and responsibilities with their standing, such that it's can seem, especially by their parents, can seem to be beneath them to, so to speak, to become ordained as a monk or nun. Indra said, you have no choice. You must be born as the prince's son. But if you wish to become a monk, I will befriend you. The Devaputra died, meaning he died from the heavenly realm. We could say re-died, and entered the womb of the prince's wife. When her days were fulfilled, a handsome comely son was born and was immediately taken to a soothsayer who asked, what were the circumstances of the child's birth? The father explained that he had petitioned the Deva on the banks of the Ganges, and the soothsayer said, the child's name will be Gangadhara. So Ganga is the original Sanskrit of Ganges. Ganges is a bit of a corruption. Dara means holder of the Ganges, holder of the Ganga. When the boy had come of age, he requested his parents' permission to become a monk. They told him, we are extremely wealthy and our clan is a large one and you are our only son. If you leave us, what will we do? Depressed by his parents' refusal, the boy thought, if I destroy this worthless body and I'm reborn in a low caste, it will be easy to become a monk. This is how compelling to some people the spiritual life was. They would renounce their caste caste and their own status, social status, to enter the spiritual life. Leaving home secretly, he climbed a high cliff and threw himself down, but was not harmed in any way. He then went to the banks of a great river and jumped into the stream, but did not drown and floated back to the shore. He took poison, but did not die. Then he reasoned, if I violate the king's law, the king will certainly execute me. Waiting until the queen and the princes went to their park to bathe, he entered the park, and when they had removed their clothing and jewels and hung them on the tree, he stole them. The gatekeeper apprehended him and took him to King Ajatashatru. Ajatashatru literally means not conquered by the enemy. A means not, Jata means conquered, Shatru means enemy. He's mentioned elsewhere in the other stories. Took him to King Ajatashatru, and when he had explained what had happened, the king became infuriated, took his bow and arrows and shot at the boy, but the arrows missed and returned to the king. Some of these would make great little, I think, cartoons. When this had happened 3 times, the king became frightened, threw down his arrows and asked, "Boy, what are you? A deva, a naga, a preta, a yaksha, a raksha, or what? Who are you?" So deva we know is like a celestial or a heavenly being, and a divinity. Naga we know is a serpent. Preta we've come across, which is a hungry ghost. Yaksha means one who harms, a harm giver. Nurjin in Tibetan. Nur means harm, jin means to give. Harm giver. So it's another class of spirits. And then Raksha we've come across as well. Raksha comes from Raksh, which literally means to protect. But I don't think that it's saying that it's a spirit that protects us. I think it's saying that it's a spirit that protects us from, that we have to be protected from, because they're a class of mischievous spirits. I found some notes from Rinpoche's teaching once. He said they're like a goblin. A goblin in Western folklore meaning a mischievous or ugly creature resembling a dwarf. So they're mischievous, and we have to be protected from their mischief, is my understanding of that term. So the king has asked, has seen that the boy has some sort of magical power, and asks, "What are you if you're not a human?" The boy replied, "Your Majesty, I have a request. Should you deign to hear, I shall tell you." The king said, "Tell me your request." The boy said, "Your Majesty, I am not a deva or a naga. I am the son of a great prince of Rajagurha. When I told my parents that I wished to become a monk, they disapproved, and I am trying to destroy my body and attain another birth. I jumped off a cliff, tried to drown myself, and took poison, but did not die. Thinking that if I broke the king's law I would be executed, I stole the queen's ornaments and was caught by the gatekeeper. But when your Majesty shot at me, I still did not die. O king, in great compassion, allow me to become a monk." The king approved, took the boy to the Buddha, and explained what had happened. The Lord allowed the boy to become a monk. He donned the religious robes and was ordained. When the Buddha taught the Dharma to him, his mind became liberated, and he became an arhat, endowed with the 3 sciences, the 6 powers, and the 8 liberations. Thereupon King Ajatashatru asked the Buddha, "Lord, what former good deeds did this young man perform, that, although he threw himself down from a cliff, he was not killed? When he jumped onto a river, he was not drowned. When he took poison, he did not die, and when he shot it, he was not hit. Now, having met the Buddha, he has been liberated from the round." He writes round with a capital R, meaning the round of birth and death. Another one that hasn't really caught on I think it's probably translating samsara, the vicious cycle. What is the reason for this? The Buddha said, countless eons ago, in the country of Benares, modern-day Varanasi, there was a king by the name of Brahmadatta. Upon a certain occasion, this king, his queen, and their entourage went to a park, and while amusing themselves, someone outside the park began to shout in a loud, unpleasant voice. When the king heard this, he became enraged and ordered the man executed. While the man was being bound, a minister came, and seeing him being fettered, asked him what crime he had committed, and when told, said he would speak to the king. Coming before the king, he said, Your Majesty, this man has committed no great crime. There are worse offences than shouting in a loud voice. Spare his life and let me have him. The king ordered the executioners to spare the man's life and to free him. Thereupon the man became the slave of the minister. Many years later the thought came to that man, Long ago, because I became excited and shouted, this evil befell me, but it is an error to be attached to it. He then requested the minister to permit him to become a monk and to tread the path of liberation. The minister told him, If you truly wish to enter the path of liberation, I shall not hinder you. When you have become a monk, let me hear from you. The man retired to a remote hermitage and by dint of right thinking and effort became a Pratyeka Buddha. So Pratyeka Buddha means solitary realizer, one who retains some kind of realization of the Dharma without a teacher. See, the way things are the way things are, whether the Buddha teaches this or not. This is why there is possible to have Pratyeka Buddhas. Not so much in our world, because we still have the tradition of Buddha's teachings, and we still have living representatives, what we would call lineage holders of the teachings. But there are, if they're in a place where there's no such thing that has been heard, then it's possible that for people to become what we call Pratyeka Buddhas. Pratyeka means individual. Buddha means to realize. He returned to the city and went to visit the minister who, upon seeing him, rejoiced greatly, offered him alms food and the four necessities. Immediately the Pratyeka Buddha soared into the firmament, remained suspended there, and exhibited the 18 kinds of miraculous powers, such as making water flow, flames to burst forth, and great lights to appear. Seeing this, the minister was delighted and thought, Because of my virtuous deed, my servant has come to this. Hereafter, wherever I am reborn, may there be virtue. May I be born in a noble caste and have a long life, and may my virtue and wisdom be equal to those of this man. The Buddha then said to the king, Your Majesty, this boy was that minister who at that time saved the man's life and attained merit. Because of that merit, wherever he is reborn, he will be without the obstacles, and now he has met me. When the Enlightened One had thus spoken, the entire assembly rejoiced greatly and had faith. So we've covered 5 chapters, and seeing as we covered 5 chapters as well in the first week, I think that'll be a good place for us to pause this week. Hopefully Rinpoche will be back next week. And yeah, I'd like to just encourage everyone to reflect on maybe not so much a literal meaning of these stories, but a implicit meaning of these stories, which is that we all have this great merit of that we have that we have voluntarily undertaken, which is to sit and listen patiently and quietly to these stories, and in doing so can really have a great, what we call blessing or ripple effect to those around us. That we have some kind of we're making some kind of connection to the great unimaginable deeds activity of the Buddha and his community. So I think if we reflect on that and then reflect on how us meeting the Dharma has been a small sort of miracle in our own lives in one way or another, otherwise we wouldn't be here today. So if we reflect on that and reflect that we can keep improving our connection to the teaching and Dharma friends and teachers, and keep improving our daily practice of the teachings, even just doing what seem to be quite simple practices, like not just looking at sort of what the highest practices are, what the longest sadhana is, this type of thing, but even something like doing just long life prayers of our teachers that we've met so far on the path. You know, just doing long life prayers, which is done usually just at the end, if at all. But just remembering that not everyone has people like that they can respect in their life, to the extent that they recite a prayer for their long life. And there's the Dharma teaching that says that those who have respect for, even if it's just for a few people, a few dozen people, people who have respect for a few people like that, are happier than people who don't have such people in their lives. And this respect that we have for other people can, of course, translate into respect for people who aren't our lineage gurus, people who aren't trained in the Dharma, and so forth. So I hope you've enjoyed sitting through these 4 chapters. I've read maybe a little bit more than Rinpoche did last week, which is fine. And so we'll continue from practice chapter 7 next week. As far as I know, this text isn't available online. It might be available to purchase somewhere online, but I hope you've all had a meaningful session, and So there is a question on Zoom. I can't quite read it. Would you be able to read it for me, Jörg?
Please advise what the text is that you're reading from.
Okay. So the title is Sutra, S-U-T-R-A, of the Wise and the Foolish. Published in 1981. So it's quite an old book. Rinpoche has a different copy of the same edition. So it's translated by Stanley, S-T-A-N-L-E-Y, Frye, F-R-Y-E. And it's published by the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. So as I said, I got this from the ANU, Asian Studies Library. You might be able to buy one from one of these Indian booksellers online. And as I said, I don't think it's published anywhere online. Not yet, anyway. Okay, we'll do the dedication. By this merit may we overcome the defilements and gain omniscience. May I liberate all beings from the ocean of birth, old age, sickness, death. Hearing the Mahayana teachings, whatever merit I have accrued, may all beings become stainless vessels to hold the Mahayana teachings. Courageous man, Jewish, knew all things, and Samantabhadra did likewise, following all of their examples. I shall dedicate all these merits. May the excellent bodhicitta take birth where it has not yet done so. Where it has been born, may it increase. freely without degeneration. Thanks everyone, good to see you all.
Thank you.